I set up cameras at home and saw my wife doing things I couldn't believe. My name is Samuel Kofi. I am 65 years old, a retired school principal from Accra, Ghana, a man who has spent his entire life teaching others about honesty, discipline and the value of family. I never imagined that I would one day narrate a story like this, especially not at this age when people expect peace, comfort and gentle evenings with the person they love. But life does not always move the way we expect. Sometimes life turns around and decides to test the strength of your heart in ways you never imagined. I had been married to my wife, Abena, for 38 years. We raised 2 children, built a beautiful home with a wide veranda and an old mango tree outside where we used to sit during sunsets. I believed she was my partner, my blessing, my friend, my comfort. I believed I knew every corner of her heart. But as I speak to you now, I speak as a man who discovered that his heart could break even after decades of marriage. It all began with a small seed of doubt, a whisper that I tried to ignore. My wife had started spending more time outside the house, always saying she was visiting her sister or helping at church. She became quick-tempered, always keeping her phone close, even taking it to the bathroom. At first I blamed age. I blamed stress. I blamed myself. But there is a point where your spirit refuses to stay blind. Something in my heart told me something was wrong. One night when she left for what she called a prayer meeting, she forgot her handbag at home and her phone vibrated. The message on the screen was from someone saved as only the letter K. It read, "I miss you already." I felt my chest tighten. I told myself it could be innocent. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. But that night I could not sleep. Something told me the truth was already sitting in front of me, yet I was too afraid to accept it. The next morning, I sat in my study staring at the walls until I made a decision that changed everything. For the first time in my life, I felt I could not trust my wife. I felt ashamed even thinking it, but the feeling refused to go away. So, I installed small cameras inside the living room, the hallway and the backyard. I told myself it was for security. I told myself it was just to calm my mind, but deep inside I knew I was searching for the truth. The guilt of doing it burned me, but the fear of not knowing burned me even more. The first 2 days nothing happened. She behaved normally, cooked my meals, asked about my medication, and even laughed at one of my old stories. I almost removed the cameras that night, telling myself that old age had made me paranoid. But on the 3rd day, everything changed. She told me she was going to the market and she left in a hurry. Something in my spirit told me to check the cameras. When I opened my phone and watched the screen, my hands started shaking. Abena walked back into the house 10 minutes after leaving. She was not alone. A man followed her inside, a man much younger than her, maybe in his late 30s, an athletic-looking man with a smooth face, wearing a fitted shirt and jeans. He walked behind her like he belonged there. I could not breathe. My wife closed the curtains, held his arm, pressed her forehead against his chest, and whispered something that made him smile. They moved around the living room like lovers who had done it many times. I dropped my phone. I felt a coldness crawl into my bones. I sat back in my chair and stared at nothing. After 38 years of marriage, this is what she was doing behind my back. I watched for a few seconds and stopped. I could not take more. My heart felt like an old drum beaten too hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, foolish. The woman I trusted with my deepest strengths and my weakest moments had chosen someone else, someone younger, someone she clearly desired. I thought of our children, our memories, our wedding day, the promises we exchanged. I felt something heavy crush my chest and I laid my head on the table, crying silently like a child. But I did not confront her immediately. I wanted to see the full truth, to understand what type of betrayal I was dealing with. For the next few days, I watched the cameras. Every time she told me she was going to church, I would see the man entering our home. Sometimes they held hands. Sometimes they laughed. Once she served him my favorite meal in my own plates. They sat on the couch where she and I used to watch evening news. That day broke me more than the rest. I had shared that couch with her for decades, and now she sat there leaning on another man, whispering into his ear. My heart turned from pain to anger, and from anger to a cold determination. When I decided to act, I acted with dignity. I knew that if I confronted them loudly, if I shouted or fought, I would become the villain. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. So I planned everything quietly. I gathered all the recordings and saved them. I transferred our house ownership documents to my name only because I had paid for everything long before. I contacted a lawyer friend and told him I was preparing for a separation. He told me to breathe deeply and not make emotional decisions. I said I had already made my decision. The final day came faster than I expected. Abena told me she was going to a women's fellowship meeting. I nodded. I watched her leave. 10 minutes later, the man arrived again. I sat in my car outside, staring at the house, feeling the anger move through me like a slow fire. Then I walked to the door and opened it with my spare key. When I stepped inside, they were shocked. My wife froze like someone had poured ice water on her. The man stepped back, confused and frightened. I did not shout. I did not insult. I simply placed my phone on the table and pressed play. The videos played one by one. The living room filled with their laughter from previous days. My wife sank to the floor. The man covered his face. I felt my heart shaking, but I stood straight like the headmaster I once was. I said only one sentence. Abena, you have destroyed 38 years of trust, and there is no coming back from this. Then I asked the man to leave my house immediately. He walked out silently with his head down. My wife tried to beg, touching my feet, holding my trousers, crying, saying she was lonely, saying she made a mistake, saying she did not know why she did it. But betrayal is like a knife. Once it cuts, the wound never closes the same way again. I told her I would not raise my hand, I would not insult her, I would not disgrace her in public, but I would no longer share my home or my future with her. I packed her clothes into 2 suitcases and placed them on the veranda. I gave her money for temporary accommodation because I refused to become a bitter man. She left crying, calling my name again and again, but I turned my face away. Sometimes dignity means walking away even when your heart is breaking. Our children were shocked when they learned the truth. My daughter cried and said she never expected her mother to behave like that. My son said he admired me for handling it with calm strength. As for me, I spent many nights sitting under the mango tree alone, thinking about the years I had lost. But I also felt something else, something peaceful. I had not shouted, I had not fought, I had not lowered myself to the level of betrayal. I had walked through the fire and come out with my dignity intact. Today, I live quietly, planting vegetables in my backyard, reading books, and visiting my grandchildren. The pain still returns sometimes, especially at night when the house feels too quiet. But my heart is lighter now. I know I did not deserve what happened. I know I honored my marriage, and I know I walked away with the last thing no one could take from me, my dignity. And that is why I tell this story to you, so you understand that sometimes revenge does not require violence or shouting. Sometimes the greatest revenge is letting the truth speak, letting betrayal collapse on its own, and walking away with your head held high, even when your heart feels shattered. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place?